Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Is Putin dragging his feet on a ceasefire deal in Ukraine? His biggest champion in America, Donald Trump, seems to think so. After multiple rounds of talks, there is no peace deal. They cannot even make a ceasefire hold. So what is next for Ukraine? Meanwhile, are the Americans planning for another war? Their B-2 stealth bombers and a lot of firepower is being deployed to Diego Garcia. We'll tell you why. In Iran, they've unveiled a new underground missile city featuring their top missiles and generals. What is the message that Tehran is trying to send? How Trump is downplaying the leaked war plans on Signal, the messaging app. Why Bangladesh's caretaker leader Mohammad Yunus is in China and how should India see this visit? Who is the man whose arrest triggered nationwide protests in Turkey? Is Pakistan breaking apart after Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa mass rebellion in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir? How Make in India in defense is making progress, with India building 65% of its weapons at home. Why Indonesians are protesting against a new military law, and how excessive use of ChatGPT makes you lonelier. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Protests in Israel and Gaza as tensions escalate. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says democracy is not in danger, accuses the opposition of fueling the anti-government protests. Rare protests also erupt in northern Gaza as hundreds of Palestinians demand an end to the war and chant Hamas out. China confirms that talks are on with India to resume direct flights between the two countries. In early 2020, flights between India and China were suspended due to the pandemic. It was extended after the Galwan Valley clashes in June 2020. In January this year, New Delhi had announced that both sides plan to resume direct air services. Another big win for the Sudanese army. It retakes the Khartoum airport from the paramilitary. The army has launched a new offensive against its rival. It wants to push the paramilitary forces out of central Khartoum. Last Friday, it recaptured the presidential palace in a key victory. Armenia's parliament passes a bill launching its bid for the European Union membership. Historically, Armenia has been a Russian ally, but the landlocked nation has grown increasingly close to the West. Yerevan has been upset with Moscow, blaming Russia for failing to protect it from arch-rival Azerbaijan. And a Pakistani court sentences 5 people to death for blasphemy. They have been found guilty of posting offensive content online. Recently, a YouTube star was charged with blasphemy for launching a perfume. So far, Pakistan has never executed anyone for blasphemy. Donald Trump came with big promises. He said he'll end the war in Ukraine in 1 day. It's been 55 days since he took office. Forget ending the war or striking a peace deal. They don't even have a ceasefire. So now the US president is having doubts. Donald Trump feels that Vladimir Putin could be dragging his feet, that he may not even want a ceasefire. The US president gave an interview. Listen to what he said, and I'm quoting, "I think that Russia wants to see an end to it, but it could be they're dragging their feet. I've done it over the years. You know, I don't want to sign a contract. I want to sort of stay in the game, but maybe I don't want to do it quite. I'm not sure." This is what he said. These are his words. Trump said all of this yesterday on a day when the US claimed a breakthrough in negotiations. You know, they've been holding talks in Saudi Arabia. The Americans have been speaking to the Russians and the Ukrainians. All 3 parties are in Riyadh, and they've held marathon talks. So yesterday, the US made an announcement. It said fighting would stop in the Black Sea. Now, the Black Sea is a strategically important region. It serves as a key transit point to Europe. Since the war began, it has seen intense fighting. Both Ukraine and Russia want to control the Black Sea. Russia has tried to enforce a blockade there because Ukraine needs the Black Sea. First, to defend its coastline, and second, to facilitate its exports. Ukrainian goods like food grains travel through the Black Sea. Now, the US has said that both sides will stop their attacks. There will be no fighting in the Black Sea. A ceasefire. They made it sound like a done deal. Except it wasn't. The Russians promptly derailed it. They laid out some preconditions for this deal. Russia said it wants some Western sanctions to be lifted first, like the curbs on food and fertilizer exports. Also the sanctions on Russian banks. They want all these sanctions to be lifted. Russia wants its banks to be reintegrated into the SWIFT system. SWIFT is a banking network. It facilitates international money transfers. To make a transfer from one country to another, you need the SWIFT system. When this war began, Russia was kicked out of SWIFT. And now Moscow wants back in. It is their prerequisite for a deal in the Black Sea.
It can be activated after fulfilling several conditions. In fact, these are the same conditions included in the Black Sea Initiative under the guarantees of Mr. Guterres, which worked for a certain period. All the conditions were fulfilled except the conditions related to the Russian side. Therefore, this time, justice must prevail, and we will continue our work with the Americans.
Remember, these demands are just for the ceasefire, the precursor for a peace deal, and the US is nowhere close to it. On the ground, the fighting continues. Ukraine is facing relentless attacks. In the last 2 days, Russian forces have launched more than 200 drones. Kiev says it has managed to intercept most of them. It is also striking back. Russia says Ukraine has launched counterattacks. It has targeted a gas storage facility in Crimea. But no damage was reported. Basically, both sides are firing, and the world is nowhere close to ending this war. Of course, the United States knows it. A new intelligence report is out. It has been presented to American lawmakers, and this report warns that the war in Ukraine may continue for longer. And the assessment is quite revealing. The US believes that neither Russia nor Ukraine is ready to make real concessions. They prefer a longer war to a bad deal. That there is greater incentive to prolong the conflict, according to both Russia and Ukraine. So they will keep fighting. That is the conclusion of this American intelligence report. It directly challenges President Trump's claims. He keeps promising a swift end to the war, but now he appears to be having doubts. He cannot say for sure if Vladimir Putin is going to accept this deal. So this is where we stand. After 3 years of fighting and almost 2 months of Trump's mediation, there is no peace deal on the table, and that has not stopped the US from negotiating with Ukraine. This time we're talking about the minerals deal. That negotiation is on parallelly. Zelensky has revealed that the US has sent a new proposal to Kiev, a new agreement for Washington to access Ukraine's minerals.
Yesterday, my team briefed me on the new agreement with the US on minerals. As of now, it's a big, full agreement with how the Americans see it to be. There were the early steps in the framework agreement, if you remember, and after this framework the full agreement has to be developed. Now, the American side proposed to us one big agreement, immediately. This is their view. I don't have any details yet with the Americans.
He did not share the specifics, but he did say that Ukraine's parliament would approve the pact. Trump has been pushing for this. He wants access to Ukraine's natural resources. He believes that the US deserves it as repayment for giving military support to Kiev. But without a peace deal, this may not fly. You cannot mine rare earths from an active war zone. You need peace or a ceasefire at the very least, both of which remain out of Trump's reach at the moment. The US president is pushing for peace in Ukraine, but he's got other plans for West Asia. Donald Trump is preparing for an escalation, and his target are the Houthis in Yemen. The US is already bombing them, but it is also planning for something bigger. Why do I say this? Because the Indian Ocean is buzzing. American B-2 stealth bombers are in the region. They landed in Diego Garcia. It's a remote island in the Indian Ocean. It serves as a joint base for the UK and the US, and it has been a hub of intense activity of late. The first reports came from open source flight trackers. They tracked unusual movement involving at least 7 B-2 bombers. These planes took off from Missouri in the US, from the Whiteman Air Force Base, and they flew non-stop to Diego Garcia in Africa. And they weren't alone, these planes. They were joined by 3 C-17 cargo planes and 10 aerial refueling tankers. That's some serious aerial movement. The US has 20 B-2 bombers in total, 20 bombers. Now, 30% of that fleet is in Diego Garcia. Clearly, something big is brewing. These bombers are not for power projection. They are meant for penetrating enemy airspace and delivering heavy payloads undetected. That is their purpose. It has been done time and again. In the 2 Gulf Wars, the Iraq War, and in Afghanistan. Clearly, they've been tasked for action again, and the Houthis seem to be the target this time. But why the B-2s? Because they are well versed with the region. These are stealth bombers, and they have bombed Yemen before. The airstrikes were conducted in October last year. Trump was not in the White House then, but he is now, and Trump wants to send a message that he is serious about the Houthis and Iran.
The Houthis are absolutely on the run. The worst of them has been killed as they shoot missiles at ships, randomly shoot missiles at ships. And they make their own missiles. You know, this is not an incompetent group of people. They make their own missiles. They get the missiles also from Iran.
You may be wondering about the deployment. Why the B-2 stealth bombers in Diego Garcia? Why aren't they closer to Yemen? It's simple. It's more strategic than any American base in West Asia. The distance protects the island. Diego Garcia is more than 3,500 kilometers away from Yemen and about 4,000 kilometers from Iran. So it's safe from any retaliation. None of the Iranian or Houthi ballistic missiles can reach as far as Diego Garcia. So the Americans do not have to worry about defense. They can be in offensive mode. The B-2 stealth technology is too advanced for Houthi radars. They will remain undetected as they drop bombs, and they can return to the island safely. But the build-up at Diego Garcia is part of a broader strategy. The US is flooding West Asia with more assets. An additional aircraft carrier strike group is being deployed, the USS Carl Vinson. It has been redirected from Japan to West Asia. It will join forces with the USS Harry Truman, which is already serving an extended deployment. Then we have additional F-35 stealth fighter jets. They've also been dispatched for this region. What does all of this mean? Trump takes the threat from Iran and the Houthis very seriously. He has always seen Tehran as a threat. It goes back to his first term. He pulled out from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018. He ordered the airstrike on Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in 2020, and he put multiple sanctions on Iranian assets, including their oil. This was during the first term. Then, during his re-election campaign, Trump threatened to blow up Iran to smithereens. Now he's back in office, and he is raising the heat again. But Trump's Iran plans go through Yemen. He sees the Houthis as an extended Iranian militia. So he's taking the fight to Yemen. He declared the Houthis a foreign terrorist group. And this happened on the 22nd of January. That was Trump's second day in office as president, 22nd. He has increased military action against the Houthis since then. At least 17 US airstrikes were reported last night. Yes, 17 airstrikes in one night. And this was without the B-2 stealth bombers in the picture. They are deployed and ready now. Their presence only points to more airstrikes. So Trump clearly has a plan. He wants to weaken the Houthis by sending his most lethal planes. The action is directed towards the Houthis, but the message is for Iran. Either negotiate with Trump on his terms or prepare for a conflict. Trump is not the only one flexing his military, though. Iran, too, is joining the party. Tehran has released a new video. And what is it about? An underground city loaded with missiles. This is an 85-second video. It was released by the Iranian state media. It shows two generals inspecting weapons. And all of this is happening underground. But there's more than what meets the eye. Let's start with the two generals. They aren't your ordinary commanders. One of them is General Mohammad Hossein Bagheri. He is the chief of staff of Iran's armed forces. Beside him is General Amir Ali Haji Zadeh. He is the IRGC aerospace chief. He also commands the rockets and missile forces. The IRGC stands for Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It's not like the Iranian army. This group only defends the Islamic regime and its supreme leader. That's what the IRGC is for. It's very powerful. Now, both these generals are responsible for Tehran's long-range weapons. Clearly, they are very important. The video begins with them riding in an open jeep. They drive through the tunnels, which are packed with hundreds of missiles. Then they step down. They salute pictures of Iran's supreme leader and walk over an Israeli flag. Let me unpack the video a little further for you. Iran is sending a message here that its attack platforms are ready. Almost all of Iran's strategic weapons were on display here. This includes the Ghadar and Qasim missiles. Both of these were used to strike Israel in October last year. The tunnels were also lined with warheads and hundreds of rockets. Clearly, it's a signal. Tehran is ready for any escalation. And the Iranian generals did not mince any words. They said Iran will make a new missile city every week. Listen to this.
If we start today, we will unveil a new missile city every week. The project will continue for the next 2 years.
A new missile city every week. That's what Iran wants. But it won't be easy. Underground bases require a lot of funds, a lot of manpower, a lot of space, and a lot of time. Iran already has a few, at least 3 that we know of, 3 such cities. The IRGC revealed its first underground base in 2020. That was in western Iran. The other 2 bases are slightly more north, and now Iran has a 4th underground facility. The location remains a secret, but the revealing comes at an important time. Tensions in the region are at an all-time high. Tehran is facing threats from Washington. Trump has given a 2-month deadline for a new deal. A new nuclear deal. Like I said, Trump scrapped the first nuclear deal in his first term. He wants a new one now. He also wants Iran to stop supporting its proxies. He wants to shut the tap for Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. Here's what he said.
You have Hamas, you have Hezbollah, you have the Houthis, you got a lot of stuff going on with Iran. And we sent a letter to Iran. You're going to have to be speaking to us one way or the other pretty soon because we can't let this happen.
Having Trump in the White House gives Iran a lot more to worry about. And why is that? Because Trump has close relations with Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was the first foreign leader to visit Trump after his return. And he was there for a purpose: bombs. You see, the Biden administration had paused some weapons deliveries to Israel. This included heavy-grade munitions. Joe Biden was unhappy with Netanyahu's offensive in Gaza, so he stopped sending some weapons, but that was overturned last month. Washington has restarted the deliveries. This includes the 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs. These weapons have one purpose: penetrate the surface and explode underground. Bunker buster bombs. And that is bad news for Iran because these underground missile cities are now vulnerable. They're designed for a specific purpose: to keep missile stockpiles safe from aerial attacks. But they can be taken out using bunker buster bombs. Even a single bomb would be catastrophic. So despite being underground, Iran's missile cities are at risk now. A single blast would trigger a chain reaction. It would explode the whole facility. And this was seen very recently. It was done by none other than Israel. Bunker buster bombs killed Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah in September last year. Nasrallah's heavily fortified bunker was 60 feet underground, 60 feet underground, but Israel took him out with these bombs. So what's the takeaway from this? Iran's underground missile city may be safe for now because its location is unknown. It will continue to safeguard Tehran's strike capabilities, but in case there is another escalation with Israel, a bunker buster bomb penetrates, it would be catastrophic for Iran.
Don't insult the intelligence of the American people. Did he invite himself to the signal thread?
I don't know how he was invited, but clearly he
not
was added.
Answer my question, ma'am. You were not TG on this group chat.
I'm not going to get into the specifics.
So you
of the
refuse to
delivery.
acknowledge whether you were on this group chat.
Senator, I don't want to get into the specifics.
Ma'am.
Look, I take full responsibility. I built the group, and my job is to make sure everything's coordinated.
But how did the
execute.
number? I mean, I don't mean to be pedantic here, but how did the number?
Have you ever had somebody's contact that shows their name, and then you have somebody else's number there?
I never make those mistakes.
Right.
The United States has seen its fair share of leaks. The Pentagon Papers, WikiLeaks, Snowden's NSA disclosures. They've seen a lot of them, but never anything like this. Top secret military intelligence was not hacked or spied or stolen. It just slipped through the cracks. All because someone messed up a group chat invite. We told you about this yesterday. On March 11th, Jeffrey Goldberg got a Signal invite. Jeffrey Goldberg is the editor-in-chief of a news magazine called The Atlantic. He got an invite on a Signal group. Signal is a messaging app. The sender was Mike Waltz, Trump's national security advisor. Goldberg thought it was fake, that this was a fake group. But then he found himself inside a war room, a group chat with 18 senior Trump officials, openly discussing an attack on the Houthis. Things like how to execute it, when to strike. They discussed all of it on this group. In fact, the airstrikes were confirmed in this chat, and those messages were met with celebration, including the many emojis we told you about yesterday. That is when Goldberg realized that it was real. It was not a fake group. It did indeed feature Trump's top security team. Once he figured this out, he left the group. And then he wrote an article to expose it. You can imagine the backlash. This is a very serious slip. And who's responsible for it? For now, Mike Waltz has taken the blame. After all, he's the one who added Goldberg to the chat.
Look, I take full responsibility. I built the group. My job is to make sure everything's coordinated.
But how did the
execute.
number? I mean, I don't mean to be pedantic here, but how did the number?
Have you ever had somebody's contact that shows their name, and then you have somebody else's number there?
I never make those mistakes.
Right? You got somebody else's number on someone else's contact. So of course I didn't see this loser in the group.
Of course, the U.S. Intelligence Committee is not too pleased about it, so they pulled up Trump's top officials. First in the line of fire was Mark Ratcliffe. He is the director of the infamous U.S. spy agency, the CIA.
You are the CIA director, okay? This has happened. We know it's happened. Did Jeff Goldberg somehow, did he create a hoax that allowed him to become part of this signal thread? Please answer the question. You don't insult the intelligence of the American people. Did he invite himself to the signal thread?
I don't know how he was invited, but clearly he was added.
Clearly it was. Finish your sentence, please.
Clearly he was added to the Signal group. Your question is,
you don't know that the president's national security advisor invited him to join the signal thread? Everybody in America knows that. Does the CIA director not know that?
Then it was Tulsi Gabbard's turn, the director of U.S. National Intelligence, and she too faced a similar fate.
Into the specifics,
Ma'am, were you on? You're not going to be willing to address. So you're not. Are you denying? Ma'am, will you answer my question, ma'am? You were not TG on this group chat.
I'm not going to get into the specifics.
So you
of
refuse
the
to acknowledge whether you were on this group chat.
Senator, I'm not going to get into the specifics.
Why are you going to get into the specifics? Is it because it's all classified?
Because this is currently under review by the National Security
Because
Council.
it's all classified? If it's not classified, share the text now.
As the White House previously
Is it classified
stated,
or non-classified information on this text?
I can confirm.
Director Radcliffe, were you on the group chat?
There are three main takeaways from this hearing. Number one, no one knew about the breach. They had a journalist on a war chat for almost a week and no one had the slightest clue. Not the CIA director, not the top intelligence chief. No one knew about it. That's point number one. Number two, Trump officials are deflecting. They aren't saying how this happened. They're not answering the specifics of the questions. They're just giving vague details. And number three, Trump officials are in denial. They insist that they did not share classified information, that the group did not discuss intel. That is the official stance, and it's something that President Trump is also sticking to.
This certainly will look at this, but the main thing was nothing happened. The attack was totally successful. It was, I guess, from what I understand, took place during, and it wasn't classified information. So this was not classified. Now, if it's classified information, it's probably a little bit different. But I always say you have to learn from every experience. I think it was very unfair the way they attacked Michael. He's a good person. The person that was on just happens to be a sleazebag. So maybe that's just coincidence. I don't know.
So the Trump administration has one defense. They say it wasn't classified information, and they're accusing the Atlantic of lying. So the magazine has come up with a second article. It came out just hours ago. It is titled, "Here Are the Attack Plans." Earlier, they had not released all the messages because Goldberg was worried about national security implications, but now it is all out in the open, and you can see all the screenshots. The confirmed strikes, the attack sites, the real-time intelligence updates, all of it is out there in the open in this Signal group chat. If this isn't classified information, I don't know what is. But let's zoom out a little bit. Imagine you were an American ally like the UK or France or Japan. You were sharing your most sensitive intelligence with Washington. For example, the Five Eyes. It is an intelligence sharing alliance. It has 5 members or 5 eyes: the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. The US leads this alliance. Then one day these countries wake up to find out what? That the US national security apparently hinges on a private group chat. There is no high-tech cyber attack, no double agents, just an American official who could not manage their contacts. So the world knows exactly how the US planned a military strike, all because someone typed the wrong number. The CIA did not catch it. Top intel officials did not know about it. The White House says it is not a big deal. At this rate, the next nuclear codes might end up on TikTok. Or maybe we'll see the next invasion plans dropped in a family group chat, because clearly US national security is now available via an accidental DM. Today marks Bangladesh's Independence Day. Normally it would call for celebrations, but this time it is bittersweet. Yes, Bangladesh is a proud, independent nation, but the values it fought for in 1971 are under attack. Values like secularism, values like regionalism, values like coexistence. Usually this day is marked with a military parade in Dhaka, but this time Muhammad Yunus cancelled it. Why? Perhaps out of fear. Because the rumor mills are buzzing in Bangladesh. There is talk of a possible coup attempt. It began with an Indian media report this week. It claimed that Bangladesh's army held an emergency meeting on Monday. The agenda? To issue a threat to Yunus. Either declare an emergency or prepare for a coup. Now, both the army and the government have rejected this, plus Yunus has reached China today. He's on a 4-day trip to Beijing. If he was indeed expecting a coup, he would have stayed back to keep the army at bay. So that rules out the coup fears. Chances are this is more about the larger pivot. Yunus and company have been undermining the liberation legacy. the war in 1971, the genocide by Pakistan, the help offered by India, all of these are key chapters in Bangladesh's independence journey. But this new regime does not care about any of it, which is why New Delhi has given them a subtle reminder. Today, Prime Minister Modi wrote a letter to Muhammad Yunus, a letter to mark the Independence Day. Let me quote from what he wrote. The spirit of liberation war of Bangladesh continues to remain a guiding light of our relationship, which has flourished across multiple domains, bringing tangible benefits to our peoples. Now, this is an important reminder by India. Bangladesh may be pivoting away from its liberation legacy, but India is not ready to do so. It still sees the 1971 war as the guiding light for this relationship. This letter also shows that India is keen to repair ties, but Dhaka must take some initiative too. Consider Yunus's ongoing trip to China. You would expect Bangladeshi leaders to visit India first. After all, this is a historic relationship. Yet Muhammad Yunus chose to visit China before India. His officials are now trying to do some damage control. They say Yunus wanted to visit New Delhi first, but he did not get positive signals from the Indian government. This is classic gaslighting. You spend months criticizing the Indian government. You accuse it of favoring the previous regime. You ignore its concerns about attacks on minorities. You try to put pressure by demanding Sheikh Hasina's extradition, and yet you expect a red carpet. Like I said, this is gaslighting. Yunus created conditions to antagonize New Delhi, and now he says they're not hosting me. In China, Yunus has a lot of meetings lined up. He is expected to meet President Xi Jinping on Friday, and Beijing is hoping to make the most of it. Their ambassador has called it the most important visit by a Bangladeshi leader in 50 years. Basically, since their liberation, the most important visit by an unelected leader. China is expected to give debt relief to Bangladesh. They will also designate hospitals in Kunming for Bangladeshi patients. Again, this is very important. Dhaka has historically depended on India for medical assistance. It is closer both geographically and culturally. But Muhammad Yunus is looking beyond India. The question is, will his outreach work? Well, first things first, Yunus has no business making such dramatic moves. He is an unelected caretaker leader. His job is to bring stability to Bangladesh, not reorient Dhaka's foreign policy. Elections are expected in late 2025 or early 2026. Only that government, the one that is elected, should be allowed to make such policies. But then again, Yunus is just the face. The power behind his throne is the Jamaat, a radical Islamist group that once opposed Bangladesh's liberation. Reports say the Jamaat is calling the shots, and political parties in Dhaka are not happy about it. Parties like the BNP, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. The BNP has been the Awami League's main political rival. Now, with Sheikh Hasina gone, they were expected to rule Dhaka. At first, they indulged Yunus's caretaker antics, but now the BNP is losing patience. They are questioning Dhaka's attacks on the liberation legacy. Let me quote from what their top leader said. Some people, parties and groups are trying to make it seem as if 1971 never happened, trying to erase it from memory. My friends, those who once collaborated in the massacre are now speaking louder than ever. You would expect Sheikh Hasina to say something like this, not the BNP, because they too have downplayed the liberation legacy in the past. So why the pivot now? Perhaps to differentiate themselves from the Jamaat and Yunus, or maybe the BNP is more politically savvy. This is a party that has ruled Bangladesh before. They know how the regional politics and equations work. They also know you cannot antagonize India. On its part, New Delhi has reached out to the BNP as well. The Indian High Commissioner met BNP leaders in September last year, and a second meeting was held last month. In February 2025, BNP leaders had dinner at the Indian envoy's residence. They later called it a candid discussion. Reports say India wanted to know about the ties between BNP and Jamaat, to which the BNP said they now worked alone. They also informed the Indian envoy about Yunus's pivot to Islamist forces. They said the liberal space had shrunk. Now, this is a very significant move because India and the BNP have not shared the best of ties. But Yunus's moves are bringing them closer. All of this shows India's flexibility in handling Dhaka. But it also exposes Mohammad Yunus's hidden agenda. I mean, the BNP has more reasons to hate Hasina than Yunus. Under her rule, the BNP chief, Khalida Zia, was jailed. Yet, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party is engaging with India and building ties. But Mohammad Yunus is not. It confirms what we have already said. Hasina is just a pawn for Yunus. His ultimate target is India. Now we turn to Turkey. As you know, the country is in turmoil. Protests have rocked the nation for 7 straight days. They began last Wednesday after the arrest of Istanbul's mayor. His name is Ekrem İmamoğlu. He is widely seen as a main rival to Turkey's president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The Turkish protesters believe that his arrest was politically motivated, a way to get him out of the running and clear the path for Erdogan ahead of the next election. So today, let's take a closer look at İmamoğlu, who he is, what he has achieved, and why Erdogan is desperate to be rid of him. Here's our report.
Başkanım, her şey güzel olacak. Kendinize iyi bakın. Bunlar geçecek.
The protests in Turkey began after this. Police officers descended on the house of Istanbul's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu. It was an early morning raid. İmamoğlu saw what was going on outside and he got ready to surrender. He put up this video ahead of his arrest.
Üzülerek söylüyorum. I am saddened to say that a handful of minds trying to usurp the will of our people have used my beloved police, the security forces of this country, as a tool for this evil, and have piled hundreds of police at my house, at the door of the residence of 16 million Istanbulites. We are faced with great tyranny, but I want you to know that I will not give up. I love you all very much. I entrust myself to my nation. Let my entire nation know that I will stand tall. I will continue to fight against that person in his mind that uses this entire process as an apparatus.
İmamoğlu said he would continue to fight against the person who was weaponizing the legal process. He didn't say the name, but all of Turkey knew he was talking about the president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Erdogan has been trying to get rid of İmamoğlu for years. And he took this latest shot on Wednesday morning. That is what sparked the massive protests in Turkey. İmamoğlu is considered Erdogan's main rival. He was to officially be declared the opposition's presidential candidate on Sunday. The police apprehended him before that could happen. But the Turkish opposition party elevated İmamoğlu nonetheless. Ekrem İmamoğlu was born in 1970, near Turkey's northeastern city of Trabzon. He later moved to northern Cyprus, where he studied in local universities. He eventually transferred to Istanbul University in 1990 to complete a bachelor's degree in business administration. İmamoğlu later did a master's in human resources management, again from Istanbul University. After graduating, İmamoğlu ran a restaurant in Istanbul and also managed his family's construction business. He eventually became a board member for a Turkish football club in his hometown. In 2009, İmamoğlu took the political plunge, and 5 years later, he won his first political office, becoming mayor of a district of Istanbul. In 2019, he was declared the mayoral candidate for all of Istanbul. The city had been controlled by Erdogan's AK party and its predecessors for 25 years. İmamoğlu was facing an uphill battle, but somehow he prevailed. He won by a razor-thin margin of 13,000 votes. So, Erdogan's party made an appeal and invalidated the election. There was a rerun 2 months later. and Imamoglu won again, this time with a margin of about 800,000 votes. Erdogan and his party not only failed to oust Imamoglu, they made his mandate stronger. So it seems the Erdogan regime decided to change tack. They started going after Imamoglu through legal means. In 2022, the Istanbul mayor was sentenced to 3 years in prison and barred from politics because he had called Turkey's Supreme Election Council fools. These were the people who annulled the first Istanbul mayoral election in 2019. Imamoglu appealed the verdict, and the case is still ongoing. But the lawfare didn't stop there. Last Tuesday, Imamoglu was dealt another blow. His bachelor's degree from Istanbul University was revoked, apparently because the Cypriot university he transferred from wasn't recognized at the time. This happened 31 years ago. Istanbul University didn't have a problem when he was transferred, and they even let him pursue a master's degree after this. So clearly, the problem is a new one. And it just so happens that a Turkish presidential candidate needs to have an undergraduate degree, which means the revocation would rule Imamoglu out. Imamoglu's degree was revoked last Tuesday, and less than 24 hours later, he was arrested on charges of corruption and aiding terrorism. The Turkish courts have decided to keep Imamoglu imprisoned, even as he awaits the results of his corruption trial. The courts have rejected a detention on the terror charges, for now anyway, because he's already locked up. That is how things stand at the moment. It's clear that Erdogan's regime has been relentless in trying to oust Imamoglu. The reason for this is simple. Imamoglu has a track record of defying Erdogan. He beat Erdogan's candidate twice in 2019 and then again in the 2024 Istanbul mayoral election. Imamoglu has shown Turkey that Erdogan is not invincible, and that is why Erdogan wants him gone. After all, authoritarianism needs despair to thrive, and Imamoglu has been a rare glimmer of hope for the Turkish people.
They say a country is the sum of its provinces. Certainly not Pakistan. Most of their provinces seem to be in open rebellion. We saw what happened in Balochistan earlier this month. Separatists hijacked an entire train during its journey. The other rebellious province is Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the nerve center of the Pakistani Taliban. The Pakistani army is already struggling with these challenges, but it seems like a new one is brewing. In a province that does not even belong to Pakistan, but it occupies illegally. I'm talking about Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, or POK. Massive protests have broken out in this region, and leading the charge is the United Awami Action Committee. This group has made certain demands from the Pakistan government. They want a special package for displaced people in POK. They also want 12 assembly seats for these displaced people. And if the demands are rejected, then the group is threatening dire consequences. Their leader spelled out the warning during a recent iftar dinner. He asked the Pakistan army to not crush their rebellion. If they tried, the response would be harsher. Let me quote from what he said. If we are tortured, we will not run away, but will hit back. The Pakistani army will not find dead bodies like in Balochistan. They will find dead bodies at the Mangla Dam. Now, to give you some context, in the Balochistan attack, a number of security personnel were killed by the separatists. Their bodies were later recovered from the train hijack site. But this group in the POK, the Awami Action Committee, is saying that they won't leave the bodies of Pakistani soldiers. They will be dumped in the Mangla Dam, which is a dam in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Now, this is a dangerous threat, one that adds to the headache of Pakistan's army. They're facing threats on multiple fronts. The Taliban captured power in Kabul. They have been shielding the army and arming these militant and terrorist groups. The Taliban have been shielding them, sort of like an UNO reverse. Pakistan supported and sponsored terrorists against their neighbor India. Now the Taliban is doing the same to their neighbor Pakistan. I guess what goes around comes around. Despite these challenges, Pakistan is still living in its Delulu world. Forget controlling occupied Kashmir, they're talking about Jammu and Kashmir as well. Pakistan's envoy raised it recently at the United Nations. He talked about Jammu and Kashmir at the UN. India's representative gave them a fitting reply. He said, stop the unwarranted claims on Kashmir, end cross-border terrorism and vacate Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Listen in.
Jammu and Kashmir was, is and will always be an integral part of India. Pakistan continues to illegally occupy the territory of Jammu and Kashmir, which it must vacate. We would advise Pakistan not to try to divert the attention of this forum to drive their parochial and divisive agenda. India will refrain from exercising a more elaborate right of reply.
It's a good deal for Pakistan. They cannot handle their own provinces. There is no way they can bring prosperity to an occupied one. So Islamabad's best option is to forget its claims and hand over Kashmir. That is the logical option. Safe to say the generals won't do that. So can they control these insurgents and protests with military force? Experts don't think so. For starters, Pakistan's army will face a manpower problem. Both Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are unforgiving regions, rocky, mountainous and sprawling. Plus, the insurgents are armed. They have American weapons left behind in Afghanistan. It will be very tough to flush out fighters from such terrain. Just look at what happened to the Americans in Afghanistan. Similar terrain and decades of endless war. Another issue is priorities. Pakistan's military lives in permanent paranoia about India. So a lot of their resources are focused on the line of control, the LOC, their de facto border with India. So experts doubt Pakistan's ability to mount such a multi-front campaign. What they need is foreign support, which is why Pakistan keeps crying about terrorism at the UN. They're hoping the world, especially the United States, will help them. But will Donald Trump take the bait? That is the question. In his last term, he accused Pakistan of playing a double game on terror. And this time too, his top officials are suspicious of Pakistan. A lot of them have openly called for the release of Pakistan Army's enemy number one, their jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan. In fact, a bipartisan bill has been introduced in the US. It aims to force Pakistan to release Imran Khan. How? By using targeted sanctions on Pakistan's army chief. Basically, the bill calls for US sanctions against the Pakistan army chief. If passed, this would be a significant setback to Pakistan-US ties. So let's see how it progresses. Either way, one thing is clear. This is arguably Pakistan's weakest point since the 1971 war. In fact, this is a déjà vu moment for them. Provinces are once again rebelling against the army's crackdowns and persecution. Let's see if history repeats itself. Now let's talk about India's defense industry. It has reason to celebrate. India's defense production is breaking records. Last year, India produced arms and equipment worth over $14 billion. That's a new record. According to the Defense Ministry, India now builds 65% of its weapons. These range from warships to fighter jets and missiles. Plus, India's defense exports are surging. The government says India supplies equipment to over 100 countries. The mission to make in India for defense is making progress. Our next report tells you what we need to do to sustain this momentum.
The Make in India initiative has delivered a success story. Defense manufacturing is picking up. India's Defense Ministry has released fresh data. 65% of defense equipment is now manufactured domestically. It's a remarkable turnaround. In the last financial year, India's defense production stood at well over 1 lakh crore, a 174% rise from 10 years ago. So what's driving this surge? It's India's foray into manufacturing of modern weapons. Stuff like warships, fighter jets, artillery systems and other cutting-edge weapons. They're all being developed in India now. The surge in production mirrors India's progress in defense exports. Indian defense manufacturers are now exporting to over 100 countries. In the last decade, this number has grown by 30 times. India's major exports include bulletproof jackets, the Dornier aircraft, which is used for naval surveillance, Chetak helicopters, fast interceptor boats, and lightweight torpedoes. So who's buying all this equipment? India counts countries like the United States, France, and Armenia as its major buyers. Even the Russians have bought Indian defense supplies. Russian soldiers are using Indian military boots. They were made in the Indian state of Bihar. These are promising signs for India's defense industry. For a long time now, India has been making a push for this. First, to meet its own diverse defense needs, and then to compete in the global arms bazaar. But consistency would be key to maintain momentum. In recent months, India's fighter jet program has received much attention. The Indian Air Force has been waiting for Tejas jets. They are supposed to replace India's aging fleet of Russian MiGs. But deliveries have been delayed. It had forced India's Air Chief Marshal A.P. Singh to question HAL, that's Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. HAL is a public sector unit and it's manufacturing the Tejas jets. HAL has been struggling to procure engines for it. The US multinational GE was supposed to deliver them. But deliveries have been running late for about 2 years now. The project is now being fast-tracked. GE has started to deliver its first engines. At least 12 of them will be delivered this year. From next year onwards, India is expected to receive 20 engines every year. This will enable HAL to step up production of the Tejas. The deliveries will help in restarting the production line. Talks are underway to co-produce these engines in India as well. This would involve technology transfer, this will improve production timelines and further the goals of the Make in India mission.
Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. This is a well-known quote, but perhaps there isn't an Indonesian translation. Because the country is heading backwards, back to the days of military dictatorship. Sadly, the Indonesian people themselves set this off by electing Prabowo Subianto as president. He was once the son-in-law of Indonesia's dictator Suharto. Now he is president, and in the past few days his country has been protesting. It began last Thursday in the capital Jakarta when protesters stormed Indonesia's parliament building. The protests resumed on Monday, with things turning especially violent in Surabaya. That's Indonesia's second largest city. The scenes are chaotic and violent. They highlight the desperation of the protesters because they're terrified of a return to Suharto's dictatorial regime known as Orde Baru, the new order. Time for a brief history lesson. Suharto was Indonesia's second president. He was a military general. In 1966, he took control of the country, and 1 year later, in 1967, he assumed the presidency. He ruled Indonesia until 1998 for a full 32 years. And it was a bloody time. Suharto's regime began with a violent crackdown on communism. In fact, this is how he came to power in the first place. In the 60s, communists were gaining ground in Indonesia and the US was alarmed. Remember, this was the 1960s. It was the peak of the Cold War. It was the US and the capitalist West versus Russia and the communist East. But Indonesia was neutral. It was a non-aligned nation. And the US wanted to keep it that way. So when the communists started gaining ground here, Washington tacitly supported Suharto. And the general did not disappoint his American patrons. He took over Indonesia and the streets ran red with commie blood. In exchange, Suharto was given free rein. He was allowed to do as he pleased in Indonesia. So this general turned president turned his military into a bureaucracy. Military officers had dual functions. They had military duties and civilian ones. Suharto called this system the new order. Now let's fast forward to today. Suharto is dead, but his one-time son-in-law is Indonesia's president, Prabowo Subianto. Prabowo won the election last year after failing to win it twice before. In 2014 and 2019, Prabowo Subianto ran a relatively honest campaign. He presented himself as a former military general, a run-of-the-mill strongman, and the Indonesian public rejected him resoundingly, both in 2014 and 2019. Prabowo should have been relegated to the pages of history. But he was given a political lifeline by the man who defeated him. Indonesia's former president, Joko Widodo, better known as Jokowi, he made Prabowo Subianto Indonesia's defense minister in 2019 and helped rehabilitate his image. This worked like a charm. Indonesians forgot about Prabowo's dark past, his direct role in the kidnapping of political activists, and his dishonorable discharge from the military. Instead, Prabowo was rebranded as a sweet grandfather figure, and he eventually won the 2024 election in Indonesia with a landslide. But as they say, a leopard does not change its spots. Despite the new grandpa image, Prabowo is still a military man to the core, and he's also a product and beneficiary of Suharto's new order. So, of course, he was going to try and bring it back. He's been laying the groundwork for a while now, getting the Indonesian military ready for a return to dual functions. And last Thursday, he made his move. Prabowo and his allies control the Indonesian parliament. The opposition parties are reportedly under pressure. So together, the parliament approved an amendment to Indonesia's military law. They allowed active military personnel to take over more civilian jobs. On-duty soldiers can work at the Attorney General's office or the State Secretariat. They can also conduct cyber security operations now. And that last part may not sound so bad until you see reports like this. Indonesia's military is apparently conducting disinformation campaigns against its own citizens. They have begun discrediting people opposed to their new role. They're calling them foreign stooges. How utterly predictable. This is what happens when you give the military extra powers above and beyond their actual job. Military personnel are also humans, and absolute power corrupts everyone. There are plenty of examples in Asia, close to Indonesia, like Thailand and Myanmar, where the juntas effectively control all aspects of life. A little further away is Pakistan. There's a saying there: the Pakistani army has never won a war and never lost an election. This is the reality of military rule, the true face of Suharto's new order and all its copycats. So let's pray for Indonesia and hope that they can come back from the brink once again. Our last story tonight is about loneliness. Do you ever have one of those days where you just want to vent, but no one's around? Well, guess what? Now there is AI for that. ChatGPT is always there, always listening and never rolling its eyes when you repeat the same thing the 10th time. It plays the role of part best friend, part therapist and part trivia whiz. But here's the twist. Research suggests the more we turn to AI for conversation, the lonelier we might actually become. Heavy use of apps like ChatGPT is making people lonely. So is ChatGPT a comforting companion or a social trap? Our next report tells you.
ChatGPT started out as an AI-powered chatbot, but now it has become the digital equivalent of a best friend, therapist and encyclopedia wrapped into one. It's available 24/7, it never judges, and it doesn't get bored when you complain about the same thing for the 20th time. So what's not to love? Well, according to researchers, perhaps quite a lot. According to studies from OpenAI and the MIT Media Lab, heavy users of ChatGPT tend to be lonelier. They are more emotionally dependent on AI, and most alarmingly, they are less likely to engage in offline social relationships. At first glance, this doesn't seem like a bad thing. After all, AI is filling an emotional gap. So, what's the harm? Isn't this just a high-tech version of talking to your dog or even keeping a journal?
Hello, how are you?
Well, not quite. The problem is that unlike a dog or a diary, ChatGPT talks back, and it's designed to be eerily good at it. Research warns that AI chatbots are hacking our emotional wiring. Some experts define it as doing an open brain surgery on humans. This isn't just an abstract academic worry, it's about real people forming deep emotional attachments to a machine. And it's already happening. Studies found that those who spent the most time emotionally engaging with ChatGPT reported higher loneliness levels. It's the ultimate chicken or egg dilemma. Are lonely people turning to AI, or is AI making them lonelier? Either way, it's a sobering realization. The same tool meant to bridge human connection might be deepening isolation. One particularly curious finding from the MIT study was about female participants. After 4 weeks of chatbot interaction, they are slightly less likely to socialize than male counterparts. Even more intriguingly, users who spoke to ChatGPT's voice mode in a gender that's not theirs reported higher levels of loneliness and dependency. Is this because AI mimics human conversation so well that it creates an illusion of emotional fulfillment? Or does it make us crave even deeper interactions, ones that real-world relationships struggle to match? Well, no one knows yet, but not everyone is ringing the alarm bells. Some experts suggest that AI can provide meaningful emotional support, but it depends on how we use it. We've all seen this movie before. Social media promised to connect us, yet somehow left us scrolling through feeds alone at 2 a.m. Could AI chatbots be the next iteration of that same cycle? If so, it's time to have some hard conversations about how we use these tools, especially before they start using us. So the next time you find yourself deep in conversation with ChatGPT, consider this. When was the last time you called a friend or simply sat in a room with another human being? Because as good as AI is at keeping us company, it still can't replace the warmth of real, messy, unpredictable human connection. And maybe that's something worth logging off for.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In South Korea, a biker dies after being swallowed by a massive sinkhole. Elon Musk shares a video of an astronaut playing solo baseball in space. And an Australian senator pulls out a dead salmon in the parliament to protest against fishing practices. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1979, Israel and Egypt signed a historic peace agreement. It came after 5 wars in 3 decades. Egypt was the first Arab nation to sign a peace deal with Israel. Since then, 5 other Arab countries have followed suit. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Senator Young removed the prop from the chamber.